Welcome back, Mets fans, to another week of Raise the Apple. And the New York Mets are entering tonight looking to avoid a sweep from the Atlanta Braves. The Mets have lost five straight after losing a very frustrating opener to the series. And then yesterday, the Braves and Chris Sale just dominated from start to finish. Tonight, Clay Holmes on the mound against Spencer Strider, so it doesn't get any easier for the Mets. Hopefully they can salvage at least something from this series. And it's something that we had to know going into it, as poorly as the Braves have played this year, that this was not going to be an easy series at all. I mean, Ronald Acuna Jr. has come back from injury and has been unbelievable. Spencer Strider's coming off a fantastic start. His last time out against the Rockies. Chris Sale was amazing last night and has been amazing pretty much all year following up his Cy Young season. And it doesn't get any better this weekend when the Mets head to Philly and they face Zach Wheeler tomorrow night. So, tough slate for the Mets. The offense has been struggling and the pitching has regressed a lot over the last week and a half or so, and the offense just hasn't picked them up. The bullpen has shown some holes, and that's to be expected across a long Major League Baseball season. It's just baseball. That's the way it is. The season is full of ups and downs, and the Mets are just in the down part right now. I mean, we had, middle-ish of May, where they went through that week stretch where they were not doing anything, and we're kind of back to that point. They were talking about it a little bit on the broadcast last night, where this Mets team was centered around the offense, and it was not realistic to expect the pitching to sustain what they were doing for the entire season. You knew they were going to regress a little bit, and at that point you hoped the offense would pick it back up and come back into what they can be, and that just hasn't happened yet. It's been very inconsistent. But the Mets are still in first place. I know it's only a game lead now over the Phillies, but a week ago it was 5.5 games, and there's at one point where the Mets were 3.5 or so games back of the Phillies. So we've said it before. I've said it before, the Mets and Phillies are going to go back and forth all summer long. That's just how it's going to be. I don't want to pull the plug on Atlanta. I mean, these games are a lot more important to the Braves than they are to the Mets. The Braves reworked their rotation, so Chris Sale pitched last night, and Chris Sale's lined up to pitch in the series at Citi Field at the beginning of next week. So these games are a lot more important to Atlanta than they are to the Mets. All in all, I'm not worried. You can be frustrated at the way that play has been lately without panicking and wanting to give up on the season. It's okay to be, it's justified. You can be a little frustrated as the season goes on, but to say the season's over, to say that the Phillies and Braves are going to catch the Mets, the Frank the Tanks of the world, I just think is a little ridiculous. We know how good this team can be. We know now. I think the timing of this, a lot of people are saying how poorly the timing is. I think the timing is great. Because now you know, okay, we're about a month and change from the trade deadline. Now we know what our issues are. Offense has just been inconsistent. We know that. Center field might be something the Mets look at with Jarren Duran or whatever the case may be, or Luis Robert. But now we know that pitching-wise, probably going to need another starter in that rotation, a high-end starter, and we're going to need some bullpen help because Reed Garrett and Edwin Diaz have been great. I know Garrett struggled in the first game of the series, and then Brazoban's come back down to earth a little bit. But outside of those three, the bullpen's got a lot of question marks. I know Justin Garza's been good since he's joined the team. Stanek's been up and down. Buto's been up and down. So it's been kind of plug and play with the Mets bullpen. So I think as we get closer to trade deadline, we mentioned it before, the Mets are going to need a high-end starter, and they're going to need some help in the bullpen. But I think the Mets can salvage a win tonight with Clay Holmes on the mound. He's quietly been very good this year. And heading into this weekend against the Phillies, it's just keep going. You just got to keep going. I think the Mets will be fine. It's part of I'm going to repeat myself probably 1,000 times as the year goes on, but it's part of the ebbs and flows of the season. You're going to have stretches where you look unbeatable, and then you're going to have stretches where you can't buy a win. Look at the Yankees. Until last night, the Yankees went almost 30 innings without scoring a single run. It's good teams will struggle. Look at the Dodgers. I know the Dodgers aren't really struggling, but they're still chugging along with Glasnow on the injured list, with Blake Snell on the injured list, with 16 pitchers on the injured list. So good teams have to face some sort of adversity as the year goes on, and it's just how they respond to it. A lot of the players seem to acknowledge that. They're not making excuses, so I don't think there's too much to be worried about. The rest of the National League, though, has some concerns from... The rest of the National League East has some concerns from a managerial standpoint. This is something I wanted to talk about to quickly transition into it. Mendoza and the Marlins, I think, are the two anomalies out of this. Mendoza's fine, and the Marlins are the Marlins. But when you look at the managers in the National League East, between those three teams, with Dave Martinez with the Nationals, Snitker with the Braves, and Rob Thomson in Philly, I think this could be a make or break time for Snitker and Rob Thomson, primarily. We'll talk about Dave Martinez in a minute. But Snitker didn't get a good public perception the way he handled the Jarred Kelenic, Ronald Acuna Jr. stuff. And Rob Thomson and the Phillies have just not been able to get it done. And Rob Thomson might be a similar situation where Tom Thibodeau with the Knicks, where he's going to get you to the playoffs every year. He's going to have a good team every year, but is he the guy that's going to get you a championship? And if the Phillies don't win it all this year or make it at least to the World Series this year, I think there might be a little bit of Rob Thomson on the hot seat. And Snitker, I think, just with how poorly the Braves have started this year, and they can't seem to dig themselves out of that hole. They've had a lot of players underperforming. But the way that situation was handled, I think I would have let Chris Sale finish last night. Not saying that's going to impact his job, but you have to wonder if Snitker is starting to maybe... There's no reports of this. This is just me thinking off my head. You have to wonder if Snitker might be running on thin ice a little bit in Atlanta. I know he's got the World Series ring with it, but it's an interesting case in Atlanta. But the most interesting case is what's going on in D.C. The Nationals have lost 11 in a row, and then you have Dave Martinez making comments that it's not on the coaches, basically throwing his players under the bus. That, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but that was not perceived well by the players, which you can expect that it wouldn't be perceived well by the players. And he's another one where you have to wonder, yeah, he got the World Series ring, but is his days in DC numbered, compared just like Snitker in Atlanta? The Nationals have a very young and pesky team. Their offense is great. It's shown glimpses of how great they can be, but pitching-wise, outside of Mackenzie Gore, there's nothing noteworthy about starters or bullpen on this Nationals team outside of Mackenzie Gore. And making those comments, losing your clubhouse a little bit during an 11-game losing streak, I don't see that ending well in DC for Dave Martinez. Same thing with Atlanta. If Atlanta doesn't get their season turned around, I don't know if the Braves would ever move on from Snitker, but you have to wonder a little bit if that's a possibility in the near future. And I think definitely Rob Thomson is getting very, very close to that hot seat in Philly, considering how many years they've had this offensive juggernaut and they've just not been able to finish, especially with Zach Wheeler announcing a little bit ago that 2027 was going to be the last year of his career and he was going to retire after that. You have to wonder if, with all that, like, time clock's ticking, you have to wonder if Rob Thomson is going to be the one on the hot seat in Philly. So a lot going on in the National League East from that standpoint, where three managers that I'm not saying are locks to be fired, but based on the way the 2025 season has gone, I don't think it would be that surprising to see maybe some changes in the division. I know Mendy's not going anywhere for a while, and Marlins are just, they're the Marlins. They don't really count in anything, to be frank. But that was just a little thing I wanted to touch on with managers in the National League East. The big story of the past week, which is what the big bulk of this week's episode is going to be about, is the Rafael Devers trade. San Francisco Giants pulled off the huge blockbuster to get Devers from the Red Sox. The baseball version of the Luka trade for any basketball fans out there, where everyone was just the most caught off guard, out of the blue trade that we've seen. Now, was this coming? Could you make the argument that this was a long time coming? Probably, but the fact that the Giants were able to pull this off, this was a huge win for the Giants, first of all. So let's talk about it from the Giants standpoint first. The Giants get a superstar third baseman. You know Matt Chapman's coming back from injury, so obviously Devers is going to have to move to first base and DH, which, of course, he said he was willing to play wherever as soon as he gets traded out of Boston. The Giants are still in it, and the Giants and Padres are right on the heels of the Dodgers. So having that, adding in a big bopper bat like Rafael Devers, the Giants are in a position to make a very big run in the NL West and definitely at least at a wild card spot. I would not be surprised if they're there at the end of the season. They're kind of surprising a lot of people. They got off to a great start and they just kept it going. Adding Devers only makes them better. Buster Posey, since taking over, has done a phenomenal job, I think, with getting the Giants back to being a threat in the National League. But they traded not that much. They didn't give up. They gave up Jordan Hicks and a couple other guys. But overall, the package was very underwhelming what they had to give up to get a guy like Devers. Now, the big story is from the Boston Red Sox standpoint. Kind of rewinding a little bit. If you hadn't known what was going on, initially the Red Sox wanted Devers to move to first base or DH. Devers did not want to do that. Devers wanted to stay at third base. It was a whole thing at the beginning of the year. Then Red Sox ownership, John Henry, and Red Sox GM Craig Breslow, they meet with Devers and they talk it out. It seemed like in the public eye, everything kind of smoothed over a little bit. Then this trade happens, which immediately tells me that we did not get the full story behind closed doors. There was something else that happened. This relationship was clearly broken between the Red Sox front office and Rafael Devers. And there was just, it was at its breaking point. The relationship between the two sides was at its breaking point. Then you had more stories come out after he was traded, where Christian Campbell, after Devers said he wasn't going to play first, Christian Campbell offered to play first base, and Devers got ticked off at that. The Red Sox are building around a big three of Marcelo Meyer, Roman Anthony, and Christian Campbell. Like, those are their three up-and-coming superstars. And then they just optioned, a little bit ago, Christian Campbell to AAA. So the Red Sox, but the crazy part is, I'm all over the place right now, but the crazy part is the Red Sox keep winning. And they're still in the playoff race. And that's, I think, what was the most crazy part of this trade, was the fact that the Red Sox are still in it. They were coming off a 5-game winning streak. They just swept the Yankees. Garrett Crochet's been pitching out of his mind. And then they trade their superstar third baseman. It was, when this trade happened, it was clear that it was just the relationship was broken beyond repair and both sides needed to move on from each other, which especially sucks after the Red Sox paid him. But this trade kind of took the entire baseball world by storm. It threw everyone out of whack. Everyone's like, what the heck is going on? There's clearly a lot more to the story and stuff slowly starting to come out, but it's very clear that the Red Sox and Rafael Devers had a broken relationship, and it was just time for both sides to move on. And this was a great move for the Giants. The Red Sox, if they wanted to trade Devers, fine, but the fact that they traded Devers for such a mediocre package instead of waiting and getting which they could have gotten a lot more for him from other teams, makes me think that the Red Sox were just sick of the Devers saga, were sick of the Devers drama, and they had to make a move and just cut ties no matter what the costs of that was going to be. This was, again, the Luka equivalent trade of baseball, where it's just like, wow. I know I made a video on it where I was thrown off by it, and I just can't believe that the Red Sox traded Rafael Devers. And this is twice now. They've had a perennial superstar that they've traded away. After winning the World Series in 2018, they traded Mookie Betts to the Dodgers, and now they've traded Rafael Devers to the Giants for basically nothing. So the Red Sox, given their status as one of the premier organizations in professional sports, trading two superstars over the last 7 or 8 years is just, something's going on in Boston where you're like, what the heck is this? I think this was, again, a great trade for the Giants, a bad trade for the Red Sox from the standpoint of they could have gotten a lot more, but it's the fact that they traded him so soon before the deadline for what they traded him for that tells me that there is a lot more going on to this story than the public knows, and we've started to see it slowly come out a little bit. But that was the big news of Major League Baseball this past week, was the Devers trade, and then the NL East managers are just kind of, in my opinion, it's a all over the place thing. But I know this episode was kind of chaotic, but we're going to circle back and end with one little thing about our Mets. We're going to circle back to the New York Mets and talk about the catching situation between Francisco Alvarez and Luis Torrens. I know we've touched on it before. I still stand by what I said, where if it's a Game 7 and I had to choose Luis Torrens or Francisco Alvarez, that I'm fine with either one of them. I stand by saying that I think the Mets did rush Francisco Alvarez, but a lot of how quickly people have turned on Alvarez is mind-boggling to me. You have to remember that Francisco Alvarez is 23 years old. He's still a baby in the eyes of Major League Baseball. He came up at the end of 2022 when the Mets were just cruising to the finish line. Then 2023 and 2024, where some ups and downs, but we saw glimpses of just how good he's going to be. And then this year he's regressed a lot. He's made a couple mental errors. That's going to happen when you have a 23-year-old catcher who has the expectations of being an absolute superstar and one of the best at his position in the entire sport. I'm not worried about Francisco Alvarez. I don't think he needs to be sent down to AAA. I don't think that's going to solve anything. I mean, we saw Luis Torrens make a mental mistake last night, trying to pick up the ball with his catcher's mask. It happens. It's part of the game. That may be a little old school or out of line thinking, but I'm not worried about Francisco Alvarez. And I just think it's crazy how quickly some Mets fans have turned on him and want him sent down, or they think he's a bust. I'm way far from calling Francisco Alvarez a bust. We've seen the glimpses of just how good he is. I'm not going to avoid that. I think he is a superstar. I think he's going to be a superstar on this team. And if it doesn't work out that way, then oh well. But I think it's way too soon to pull the rug on Francisco Alvarez. I think Alvy's going to get it together. We know he's a wizard behind the plate. He knows how to call a game. He's got a cannon for an arm when it comes to gunning out base runners. Sure, he made that little mistake the other night in extra innings, if you saw, where the Braves runner got kind of caught in no man's land between second and third, and he leaned back towards second and then quickly took off for third. Excellent base running as soon as Alvarez whipped it to second. And the bat has been inconsistent this year, but I do think that he is the catcher for this team in the long haul. I think Luis Torrens is also very good defensively. I know he had a gaffe last night, but again, that happens. And offensively, he's come back down to earth a lot. So offensively, Alvarez and Luis Torrens are very close to each other. It's not like one has been significantly better. At the start of the year, yes, Torrens was performing better than Alvarez. But for the most part, offensively, we're getting about the same thing when you look at the numbers. So I'm not worried about the Mets catching situation. I think it's a cliche answer, but I think it's just part of a baseball season. I'm not worried about Francisco Alvarez, and I think it's way too soon to call him a bust. That's just my personal opinion, though. I wanted to get that out there quick. I think a lot of people are. Mets Twitter and Frank the Tank has made it some Mets fans very toxic, but Mets Twitter is just a wild place sometimes when you see some of the stuff some of the takes that people have. But I know we went kind of fast, but that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this week's episode of Raise the Apple. NL East managers are going to be, of all the managers in baseball, I think they're going to be the ones to watch down the stretch of the season, primarily with the Phillies, Nationals, and Braves. The Rafael Devers trade that shook the baseball world and what that means for Boston long term. And then the Mets catching situation is just something that is being made into something that I don't think it needs to be in. But that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Make sure you follow on Twitter and on TikTok at RTA_pod. And we will see you guys next week. Hopefully the Mets can avoid the sweep today with Clay Holmes on the mound against Spencer Strider before a big 3-game set with the Phillies this weekend before returning home and playing Atlanta. So make sure you like and subscribe, and we will catch you all next week. Let's go Mets.